Okay, so assignments, the lab is fairly fast. You're going to use Windows 10 virtual machine, so just copy it from the drive to your desktop, which I did right here, right? If you open up before you started, if you see previous file, you should delete it. If you have a logs folder, you should delete it because it might try to revert back to its last state and it might not boot successfully. So you're going to double click the blue file to put it into your VirtualBox library or the player. You can modify the system setting. So you can change your processor, and here's your RAM and your processor to 4 like it's suggested. But like I said, if you don't have the resource, if you're using it on your laptop, you're okay with the default, which is dual core and either 4 gig or 2 gig. That should be fine. We're not running any crazy scans, so you just need to modify some certificate. So after you have changed your settings, you can click Start. So all we need to do is boot our Windows 10 VM, and then we can, you can change this, but it's not required, okay? And then we're gonna log in. So once we're logged in, we're going to access Microsoft Management Console. So you're gonna run your MMC, and Microsoft Management Console is used to administer the system, right? So like if you want to be able to access it. Now, from a server end, if you want to do certificate, you can do a local computer this way, but usually we would have a certificate authority like what I talked about. That is an install role onto your server. Maybe down the line in the next couple of labs, we can experience the server side. So it's going to break down to your local computer, which is for your device, and then your actual device that you're using, and for your current user, which is your user account. Okay. So once I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And all I have to do is on my Windows search bar, sorry, I'm just trying to open it so you can see. I'm going to search for, you can type in Microsoft Management Console, or you can just do MMC, which allows you to run the Microsoft Management Console. So it is a blank canvas to start with. So you're going, so think of it like your toolbox, right? The little logo or the little icon. So what you're going to do is you are going to, once you open it, you're going to click File and you're going to add the snap in. So we can customize our console and save it for administration purposes. I recommend that so that way you don't have to add your snap in every single time. So we're going to do File, and then we're going to do Add or Remove snap in. So here you're going to have a lot of different snap in, right? In our world, we might need to add event viewer for logs, but not today. We're going to go ahead and click certificate, which is the third item on the snap in list. And you're going to click add. So I'm at step 2 of part B. So it's going to tell you, do you want to add it for the, so it prompt you, you want a service account, the computer account, or my user account? In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to do a computer account and click next. In general, with that, right, we can, so we don't want to modify directly for our account. We're going to do it for the computer account. Okay, so sometimes you need to do the service account. Now, in the case if you're managing another system, you can browse to it, but you need to authenticate to it or be an admin in that case, right? But what we're going to do is we are going to do a local computer because we're managing our own system here, right? Our client system. So it's going to pre-select the local computer on step 4. You're going to click finish. So it's going to add it to the snap in console side right here. Okay. And after that, you're just going to click OK. So I screenshot this for you like this. So you can add as many snap in as you want, like, you know, for future purposes, like you want to do group policy. So you can just create one console so that way you can go to and configure. So once we have that selected, okay, we're just going to click OK. And it's going to add that here, okay? Now, when you see the arrow, you can expand it. And it's going to show you different folder that contains your certificate. We can expand it so we can see. So once we click OK, we're going to return to our Microsoft Management Console. Under the certificate, we're going to click on the trusted root, certificate authority. Remember we learned a little bit about that earlier, right? And the trusted root certificate authority, the CA, it contains a subfolder shown as certificate, and you can double click it to see. Now you're going to see a lot of vendor-based certificate that pertains to Microsoft, because this is Microsoft operating system, right? Sometime you would see other certificate. So will you going to have the same certificate across multiple Windows 10 system? No, right? Depending on the activities that happens on that system and the use of that system, but you do see some the same, but some are different. That's what I'm saying. So it asks you, how many certificate do you see? If you look on the bottom, it shows you the number, the count. It contains 18 certificate, right? Yes, you can count them all up. And if you scroll on the right, you can see who are the vendor, when's the expiration, some shown as expired already, right? But it does give you the count. And then it says view the certificate and the expiration on the right pane. Are there any expired certificate? If you scroll right, it shows you some expiration date. Like this one expired in December 31st, 1999, right? And then you have something from 2021.
There's one that expired like today.
Yeah. And then, so you do have some expired certificate, and you have some certificate that will go for a long time, right? So you can look at the expired certificate, and you can also double click it. So if I want to read more about that certificate or examine that certificate, it tells you when it was valid from, when it was expired. If you go to details, right? Remember we talked about a little bit about digital signature, the signature algorithm. It refers to the MD5 RSA, and your public key, which is RSA. And then so you see that there's association between your certificate and encryption, and also hash algorithm. That's going to give it integrity, confidentiality, and non-repudiation for cryptography, right? And then so you see some information. And so some other certificate, like let's say if I pick the 1999 one, the timestamp, right? And you do see some similarity with that. So it might use that for a similar service or the same. Okay? All right. So on the left pane, click on the third-party certificate. So which is down here. Click the arrow next to it and click certificate folder. So here you do see some third-party certificate, right? So certificate itself is broken into different categories on who distributed, right? Or who maintained that certificate or given that certificate to you. And so if I click on the third-party certificate, it tells me I have 6 certificates. If you look at the bottom bar right here, right? And then we're going to identify two. See you later. So identify two CAs that are issued by the third party from the list of their certificate. So on the right, if you look, there's one CA. It's going to tell you the global root CA. CA stands for Certificate Authority. That's different than the other certificate, right? So you can see there's CA there. I can double click it to see. So this certificate is used to identify to use for identity to a remote computer. This is used for remote connection purposes, right? Ensure that software is the right from the publisher, protects email messages. So the functionality of it would list that under purposes, fine. And then you can go more into details and it will tell you the algorithm. So this one is a SHA-1 RSA, right? And then it tells you when it was valid. So I can go through and I can select one CA and another CA, right? This is the hotspot 2.0, trusted root. And you can also click on the detail to look at the algorithm information, but the purpose is going to tell you the intention of that certificate. And if you look at the issue by in the next column, it will tell you, right, who distributed that. Okay, so as we looked, so let's say I selected this first CA, double click it, or if I click the first one, right, and then the detail. So it tells you on the right pane, double click the first certificate. What are the purposes of this certificate? When was it issued? When it was expired? So this is already been revoked. This is not a good example to use, right? So if the certificate is revoked, you can go to the next one. So this CA root certificate is not trusted. It tells you to enable trust, you need to install the certificate in the trusted root certificate. So sometimes you have a certificate that doesn't have the trust, right? So it tells you what to do there. But let's go back and you don't have to select the first one, but you can select the CA that we looked at. So it tells you the purposes of that certificate here. So you can include this. So protect identity, ensure software is valid from the publisher, protect software modification after publication, protect email messages, identity of the remote computer, and data. Bye. And then it tells you who provided the certificate and when it expired. So this goes until 2031. So we have a good 6 years there. Click on the details tab. You're gonna see the signature algorithm. So this one is a SHA-1 RSA. And the signature hash algorithm, that's a SHA-1. Okay. And then if you have public key information, so we can scroll down, we do have public key. Our public key length is 2048 for this particular one, and it is RSA. So RSA uses PKI, public key infrastructure. It uses asymmetric key. Okay, so you have the public key for the certificate. Now, once you have the information from the details tab, you just need to go explore. So my intention is to show you where you can find certificate because this could be your role, right? In security, we can manage certificate that would be associated with, secured services and so on. But you can also check out like how you can identify your certificate and be able to work with your certificate. And we learned about algorithm today, right? for hash and encryption. Then you go to certificate path, which is your third tab. And it tells you that this, because I'm looking at the third party one, right? It just show you that it's DigiCert, which is a third party. Now let's compare that to something that we looked at earlier. A lot of the things. Yeah, so it's usually from the entity that provides that certificate, right? So if you look at like the certificate from your local system from the trusted root compared to the third party. So the path is usually just, it's going to be the vendor information. And then the status is going to tell you that the certificate is okay or been revoked or not trusted. So there's some information there. Then we're going to click OK to close this window. And we can close the console. If you want to save, you can save it because it's virtual machine. I'm going to say no for now, right? But you know how to add your console add-ins. All right, then we are going to open up our command prompt and we're going to use the certutil command. Now, over different operating system version, you know that from Windows 7 to 10, that's different, right? A lot of companies have transitioned 7 to Windows 10 and also 10 to 11. But you can always use Microsoft Reference if you need. Okay, so let me close this to get me. I always have issue with my search bar. So at the moment, we're not going to see. So we're going to open up CMD. And we're going to do run as administrator. Okay, I'm going to change the property to make the font a little bigger so we can see. So here we just do a certutil, right? One word, dash, enum store. So just like what you see in the console earlier, right? You can use a command to be able to pull your certificate. That's what I'm showing. So it's telling me at the top, right, that you have the current user, there's the local machine, I have a my personal. So let's compare. I shouldn't have closed it earlier, but a little laggy. Okay, so when you open this, right, at the top, it's really listing the folders, right? You see my personal, root, trusted, right? So if you compare the Microsoft Management Console with what you see as output on your command prompt, you see that these are the folders that it's listed at the top, right? So it's container of your actual certificate. You see? And then it says my personal and then trusted root certificate authorities, which is this one, right? And then you have CA. So, but the organization that you see in command prompt is slightly different than what you see on the UI in the Microsoft Management Console manner, right? So, and it's pulling it from the local machine, which is what we select when we go through the add certificate add-ins. Okay. So you can just count this up to give you the answer there. Now in PowerShell, it's a little bit different to pull the certificate, but under the root. So I'm done with this. I can close this. And then I'm just going to search for PowerShell. Make sure we use the inside system, the virtual machine, not the outside host. And we're going to run it as administrator. Okay. These things you have to be at admin level. Okay. So on PowerShell, we can use a dir command. Let's pull this down a little bit. Let me leverage my screen. So we're going to do dir cert. And we're going to look at current user and root. Okay, so in this case, we're actually opening up a folder, right, that contains the root certificate. And similar to what you've seen in your Microsoft Management Console, like the trusted root, that's what you see here, right? But it gives you the thumbprint of the certificate, and it gives you the breakdown. So this is how it organizes it. Like OU, CNAME. So when you see CNAME, that's gonna tie back to a domain, organizational unit. So OU, so it categorizes it a little bit different and it display it a little bit different, but you are accessing the root trusted. Okay, so screenshot that. You can look at the number of certificate that's listed. So my point is to show you that you can access your certificate via PowerShell or command prompt or Microsoft Management Console. Microsoft Management Console is the most user-friendly as you can click and navigate. But if you only have access to command prompt or PowerShell, this is how you're able to navigate into it. Okay, so now we see on how we can view our certificate. We can close our PowerShell. And what we're going to do next is we are going to open up File Explorer, which is the folder that you see on the desktop. And when this opens up, we're going to put in the path right here in your bar, right? Your search bar or your explore bar at the top, you're going to type the %symbol app data. Now, sometime the new version of OS, they change the path. So it's always good to check with Microsoft documentation. And we're going to go into system certificate. And you see that it starts to kind of pre-fill that out for you. My certificate. And so you can click it if it finds it under the list. Now, if you see that it's empty, that just means that you don't have any modified certificate for your personal system. If you move back one step to the My, you will see, so omit this, okay? I'm gonna black highlight that. So go up to the My in the path for that and you would see. So there's some certificate, like a folder, you can see CRLs, which probably has nothing, right? So in the My folder, it doesn't have a lot because we don't have any kind of customization to your personal certificate there. Right? Take a screenshot. How many? I only have one right here, which pertains to system file for certificate read. So probably 0 overall. If you go into certificate, there's nothing. So put 0. Okay, any question? All right, next we're going to look at part C, which is encryption. So in Windows environment, it uses EFS, which is encrypted file system. Now, the way Windows work is either you compress or you encrypt. It changes the actual file header. So if you compress, you cannot encrypt using EFS. If you encrypt, you cannot compress. So what we see is EFS gives you file and folder encryption, okay? But if you do drive encryption, you would use something like, you know, more specific to like BitLocker. EFS only exists if you format your operating system using NTFS. Let's say that I have upgraded my operating system from back in the day, and I've always used FAT, like FAT32 from Windows XP, then I moved to FAT in Windows 7, and then I continue that and converting that to EXFAT. So FAT will not allow you to have to incorporate or use the EFS feature. Okay. So what you see here is we are going to open up our services manager console, and you can search for services and it will give you that under the listing, or you can just search for the entire thing. So if I type in services in my Windows search bar, right? I pull it to the right because my caption is blocking it. And then you would see that here. Okay. And then I can click on it. And it's going to give you the services management console. And on the name tab, we're going to click it to be able to sort it for the services by name. But as you can see, it alphabetized that for you. So if you just scroll down, right, you should be able to find EFS. And then we can double click it. And it shows you that this is the property of that service. And it tells you in general, this is for file encryption technology that is stored as encrypted files using NTFS, like what we said earlier. And in order to use it, it's manually on, right? You don't, so this we would be able to encrypt or not encrypt, right? We can right click a file and choose encrypt, go to property and choose encrypt or not. So the startup type is going to be manual. That means I have to go in and as a user and control more of it. I can start the service, right? So manual, that means I can click start or stop, right? But in some cases, some services that you would see, the startup is going to be automatic. That means that when the OS is running, it's going to automatically run. Like communication services does that, right? But in this case, your encryption services is not, it's manual, right? If we need to change it, we can always change it, but only certain services needs to be automatic because it takes resources from your system. Okay, so we see that now you can also check out like, you know, you can require a certain login from a certain account in order to run that service. So that can be set here. And then for recovery, if the services fail, how do you want that to happen? And then for the dependencies, it requires RPC for remote procedure call. Okay, so once we're done looking at that, we can close and you can check out other services there. We're gonna right click on the desktop, make new folder. We're gonna call this folder test1. And inside the folder, we're gonna open that up and we're gonna make a new file. So right click, new file, right? You can do a text document. We're gonna call this test1. Bye. Good night. So if we move back to the desktop, we see that the folder is set there, right? So I made a folder and I made a file and I put it inside that folder. So simply I double click the folder. You can right click and choose new text file, text document. Okay. Or you can go to the top. I think you can also, yeah, you have to move back one level. But open up the folder, right click new, make a new file. I want you to see the inheritance with encryption. So once we do that, we're going to click desktop to see our folder. And we're going to right click the folder. We're going to go to properties. I'm at SEP31. And on the general tab, I would see that this is just the general information when the folder was made, right? I'm going to click advanced. And this is where I can set EFS. So I can select this option, the second checkbox. It's going to encrypt all the sub-content within that folder. Now, like I said, you cannot do compression and encryption together. It has to be one or the other, right, for Windows technology. So we are going to select EFS, which allows you to encrypt the content of that folder. And we're going to click OK. Then we're gonna, if you want, you can click apply and OK, you know. When you click apply, it's gonna say, do you want to apply encryption to everything inside that folder, the file that we made, right? Or the subfolder if you have a subfolder. So I normally say yes or OK because that's the whole point, is using the folder to store your file and then change the folder property to have that inheritance property carried into the content of that folder, right? Very rare that we control file inside the folder separately. You can disassociate the inheritance, but so at this point, whatever that I throw inside that test1 folder is going to automatically get encrypted because it's going to take on the property of that container. And that's what you want. Okay. So click OK. All right. So we did that, right? We can close. We selected OK for 35. And then what we can do is we can return to the desktop. And you notice that now it puts a lock symbol on the folder, right? That's Windows' way of showing us that it is encrypted. Okay, so you can see that it changes, right, how the look of the folder. And then now you're going to open up the folder and what you see is you do see a little lock on the file as well, right? It's a tiny yellow lock, so sometimes that can be missed. The file name doesn't really change. So in Linux, when you encrypt, it changes, it puts an extension to the file name, whereas Windows, right, it just changed the way it looks. But if you look at its property real quick, right, and you go to advanced, you see that it selected that for you because you put it in the encrypted folder, right? So anything that you throw into that folder, it's going to select the encryption content option. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing on command prompt so you know how to encrypt. So I'm at step 37. We're going to open up CMD. So CMD. And we're going to change our directory to desktop. So once you move to your desktop area in command prompt, you're going to do a make directory. We're going to call our next folder test2. So I made a folder called test2 on desktop at step 39, and I'm going to do a dir. So this is like Windows way of doing ls. So we can do a dir to list the directory. So I have test1, which I made, right, using File Explorer, and then test2, which I just made using a command. Okay, so in Linux, we normally do ls to list the content, right? dir is going to list your current location content. So once you do that, right, you should see my new folder, which is here.
Yeah. We take this with us.
No, you have to return it. If you need it, you can either bring a drive, or you can bring your laptop, you can copy it. Okay.
Oh, thanks for anyways.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're gonna go inside the folder by doing cd test2. So notice that I'm in the path now. And I'm gonna make a file called echo. We're gonna do a test2 file. So we're gonna use echo command, and you're gonna do secret file 2. And we're gonna append that to test2.txt. Good night. Okay, so once we made a file, you want to check again, right, to see if it exists. So dir looks at the folder and say, oh, okay, so here's my file that I just made in the last, okay. So I'm at step 43, and then now I want to encrypt the folder. Remember that you need to be here, right? So I'm gonna do cipher/e. If you want to encrypt, you're gonna use a /e, and if you want to decrypt, you're gonna use a /d, as in decrypt, right? So we're gonna do an E to encrypt. And it tells me that within the directory, one thing was encrypted. So now I'm going to list it again, the content. And it still shows that my one of the only file that I have inside test2, it still show, right? If you compare, it's still the same size, and it still shows here. So in command prompt, there's no distinguish between what is encrypted and what's not visibly. Okay. What you see is that, the file stays the same with the file name and the extension, but it is encrypted. Okay. So the file name, it looks the same, right? There's no lock symbol like what you see on the UI of the desktop, but you would see that in command prompt, there's no change in the file name. Then once I do that, I'm going to move a step back. I'm going to be out of the folder now. I'm going to be in the desktop by doing cd ... Right? So in order to encrypt the folder, you got to be outside of the folder. You cannot encrypt it when you're inside. Okay? So we're going to, once you do that, you can do a dir to list all the desktop content. Same, right? Does test folder looks different? So if you want to do cipher E here, it's going to encrypt everything on the desktop. Or you can point to the actual folder. I can do that. Good night. It tells me that if I try to encrypt everything on my desktop, you notice that it says access denied on certain things, right? Because that will be a system level, but it's able to encrypt some directory, right? It's recommended to use a certain directory or the volume or disk. So if you're trying to encrypt everything on your desktop, some stuff you're going to get denied, rejection, of course. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to try to decrypt. Oh, let's do CD test 1, which is the encrypted folder we did earlier by using the properties, right click, and we're going to cipher D. So you can still decrypt it using the command, even though you encrypt it using the clip, right? The interface. And then we can do the same thing with the next step. So CD, you got to move back out 1 step, 50, back to the desktop, and then into the test2 folder. And then with that, you are going to decrypt, so cipher D, and it decrypted, right? So after this lab, what did we learn, right? We learned how to use certificate, console to examine our certificate. We use our command prompt to list our certificate along with PowerShell to view root trusted certificate. We also learned how to encrypt file using the property sheet, or right click the object and select its property and go to advanced option. We also learned how to encrypt and decrypt using our command prompt. Okay. So for the question, it asks you to put down what you have learned and summarize what you have learned about EFS and file and folder encryption. And that's all she wrote. So when we're done, be nice to our virtual machine, click Windows button, power down. And then it's going to try to update, but that's okay. Okay. So once that's shut off, you can close your application, detach your drive, return your drive, and make sure we save our document and submit. Okay.